May, thank you so much for coming today. And can you please tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I live in New York City. I am currently 30 years old and I work in finance. So the reason why I'm learning Turkish is that my boyfriend is Turkish and his family lives in Turkey. They don't really understand a lot of English, so I just wanted to, bridge that language barrier by trying to be fluent in Turkish.
Perfect. What do you do in finance?
I work in middle office. It's a product control role where I look at accounting statements, I look at trades and valuation, interesting
Okay.
number stuff.
Okay, perfect. So,
Yeah.
if you are okay with it, I would like to speak
Mhm.
a little bit of Turkish with you as well today.
Okay, okay. Tamam.
Tamam mı? Hazır mısın?
Tamam. Hazırım, hazırım.
Tamam, süper. O zaman merhaba May, hoş geldin. Sen nerelisin?
Merhaba. Singapurlu ama şimdi New York yaşıyorum. New York East Village'deki yaşıyorum.
Hı
Evet.
hı. Süper, süper. Peki kaç yaşındasın?
Am, Kaç yaşındasın? Eee, bu sene eee, 30 32 yaşındayım. Ama doğum günün Aralık'ta. So şimdi 31 yaşındayım.
Tamam, süper, harika. Peki May, New York nasıl bir yer?
Am, New York çok güzel bir yer. Çok kalabalık. Evet, çok turist var. Ama çok güzel bir yer. Evet.
Hı hı, süper. Ben, New York'a gittim ama çok hatırlamıyorum maalesef. Çok fazla hatırlamıyorum. New York'ta genellikle ne aktiviteler yapıyorsunuz?
Eee,
Çünkü sen çok
Hangi
aktif bir
Hı hı.
insansın.
Okay, çok insanlar için, New York, okay, New York çok, çok farklı aktivite var. Mesela, Class Pass'ta, çok enteresan bir, derse, gittim. Bir
Okay.
surf dersi. Evet, surf dersi,
Surf.
stüdyo, evet, spor salonunda,
Wow!
evet, surfboard var.
Hı hı.
Surf öğretmeni surfboard'da, evet, it's like surf pratik, yaptım. Çok
Peki.
enteresan, evet.
Wow, okay. Bunu daha önce hiç duymadım. Daha önce hiç duymadım gerçekten. Onun dışında sen spor yapıyor musun?
Evet, Aaa, bazen spor salonu, gittim. Buz pateni çok seviyorum. Am, evet, bazen New Jersey'deki bir, like, çok büyük, merkezi, um, surf dersi, like, gerçek surf dersi, gittik. Evet.
A! Okay. Buz pateni çok seviyorum dedin. Ne
Hı
zaman
hı.
başladın buz pateni yapmaya?
Ne zaman başladım? Belki 2 yıl önce, evet,
Hı
2
hı.
yıl önce, başladım.
Hı
Evet,
hı.
Chelsea Piers'da.
Süper, çok güzel.
Hı.
Neden buz pateni?
Okay. Neden buz pateni? Okay, 2 yıl önce, Cihan, benim, erkek arkadaşımı, um, s what is it? Ski yapmak or,
Kayak.
evet, kayak yaptık ama, kayak pratik biraz zor çünkü, New York New York arasında çok büyük bir dağ, dağ, right? Mountain, dağ like değil. Çünkü çünkü e, internette o buz pateni yaparsan kayak yapmak biraz daha güzel.
Daha kolay mı?
Evet, daha kolay. Çünkü,
A! Wow.
Chelsea Piers'ta buz pateni dersi aldık.
Hı hı. Hı hı.
Evet,
Ama,
evet.
sen snowboard yapıyorsun bir de.
Evet, snowboard da, evet,
Yapıyorum. Hı hı.
yapıyoruz. O, yapıyoruz, evet, yapıyoruz.
Peki Cihan
Hı hı.
buz patenine devam ediyor mu?
Hayır. Cihan buz pateninden çok nefret ediyor.
Neden? Neden nefret ediyor?
Bilmiyoruz.
Tamam, harika.
Bilmiyorum.
Başka
Evet.
hobilerin var mı May?
Başka hobileri, oh, eee, yemek yiyorum.
Evet, çok
Evet,
güzel
yemek
yemekler
yiyorum.
yiyorsun. Hı hı.
Evet, evet. Seyahat ediyorum.
Hı hı.
Am, başka. Am,
Pilates.
evet, evet ama pilates, hobilerim değil ama, Am, düzenli egzersiz için, çok iyi.
Tamam, süper, süper, harika. Seyahat etmek seviyorum dedin. Seyahat etmeyi
Imm,
seviyorum dedin.
ımm.
En son nereye seyahat ettin?
En son nerede? Hatırlamıyorum. Okay. En son, California, San Francisco, California'daki San Francisco, gittik. Ailemle gittik. Lake Tahoe'ya gittik. Evet, evet, evet.
Lake Tahoe nasıl bir yer?
Lake Tahoe çok güzel. Um, eee, like doğalı. It's like very naturey. Um,
Well, you can say something like, "The nature is amazing." Doğa harika.
a okay. Evet, evet. Doğa harika. Lake Tahoe çok büyük bir göl.
Hı hı.
Göl. Evet, evet. Evet, çok
Orada,
güzel.
ne
Çok
kadar
seviyorum.
kaldınız? Kaç gün kaldınız?
Ne kadar kaldı? Kaç gün? Lake Tahoe'da, 5 gün
Hı
kaldık.
hı.
Evet.
Hı hı.
Airbnb bir apartman, kaldık.
Süper, süper. Peki, son olarak May, sen Türkiye'ye geldin mi?
Evet, evet. Eee 2 yıl önce, İzmir'e gittik. Çünkü Cihan'ın ailesi, Bergama'da. Çünkü, o yüzden, Türkiye'ye gittik.
İzmir'e ve Bergama'ya gittin. İstanbul'a gittin mi?
Henüz,
Henüz
henüz.
gitmedin,
Bir
henüz
gün.
gitmedin,
Evet,
henüz
henüz
gitmedin.
gitmedim.
Peki
Bir
İzmir
gün, bir
nasıldı?
gün.
İzmir'de neler yaptın? Nerelere gittin?
A, İzmir çok güzel, yemek çok güzel. Alsancak gittik. Orada, çok güzel bir pide, tahini pide var.
Hı.
Like, tatlı pide, çok güzel. midye de like çok güzel. Evet, çok lezzetli.
Ben yemedim tatlı pide.
Evet, tatlı pide, evet, evet.
Wow.
Tahini var, fıstık var.
Aha, ha ha. Süper. Peki İzmir'de ne kadar kaldın?
İzmir'de eee, belki beş gün, evet,
Çok
beş
az.
altı gün, beş altı
Çok
gün.
az kaldın. Peki gelecekte bir
Evet,
plan var mı? Türkiye'ye gelmeyi planlıyor musunuz?
evet, evet. Gelecekte İstanbul gideceğiz.
Tamam, beni ara.
Evet.
Gelince beni ara. Tamam. And before trying Turkish, like, did you try
Mhm.
other stuff for learning Turkish?
I did try Duolingo a little bit, but Duolingo is, they teach you like a lot of vocabulary, but they don't really teach you the grammar.
Mhm.
So you're kind of like, okay, and so now I have all these words that I know, but I don't know how to use them. So it wasn't very helpful for me, especially since Turkish is a very like logical language where you have to learn it in steps. So yeah, so that's why I started Googling on what courses there were, and Turkish Lake popped up.
Ah, so you found it on Google.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Google.
How about
I think
YouTube?
so. I think it was on Google or Instagram. Not really YouTube because I'm not a big YouTube user. So I think it was like Google slash Instagram. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay. And how about you said that your boyfriend is Turkish. Like, does he help you with this learning process or?
Yeah, so he does help me. So when like I'm doing the courses, the lessons, sometimes I ask him, "Oh, like I got this wrong. Like, can you explain it?" But I think for someone who has like grown up like learning or knowing Turkish, like it's a bit hard to explain the why. Like sometimes I'll ask, "Oh, what's the infinitive form of this word?" And he goes, "What is infinitive?"
What is
So
infinitive? Probably.
it's
Yeah.
like yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's like, I mean, he helps in like translating, but to explain like the whys, it's like, he goes, no, I don't really know. It's like, in English, when you try to explain why something is the way it is, I'm like, I don't really know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true. Like, to be honest, I wouldn't know it as well. Like before doing this job, I had no idea about it as well. Sometimes like I tell it to my friends and they're like, "Oh, it's very difficult." It's they realize that it's very difficult to be honest.
It's
But
difficult
we,
to
hmm,
explain. Yeah.
it is. It is
Yeah.
because we don't really know why we're doing it. So you're absolutely
Yeah.
right
You
about
just
that.
know it. Yeah.
What was the most challenging part in this journey?
Honestly, the most challenging part was to like keep myself accountable. It's like, you have all the details there, but sometimes if you don't like set aside some time for you to actually like, review, go through it, then you kind of forget. And then when you go to the next lesson, you're like, oh, what did I learn the last lessons? That's always like the harder part, like because I live in New York, so like you don't really speak a lot of Turkish, or if any, if you don't like hang out with like Turkish people. So like, with any language, like practicing is important and also kind of reviewing it. So if you don't do that, it kind of gets like harder because it's like you're not surrounded by it. So that's a bit of a challenge. But I also found that if after every lesson, if I actually go out and rewrite everything that we've learned and like talk through it, it really helped. But
Yeah,
yeah, so all the details is there, but sometimes it's a bit hard to like hold yourself
That-
accountable.
That's true. Actually, I'm kind of curious because when did we meet? Like, because I was your teacher, luckily. And
Yes.
when did we start the program? And you started from April.
I think it was like in April or May, maybe then.
So
Last
something
last year.
like that. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's
It
been
was
like
right
yeah.
before summer, and I think like your performance was really good. So I'm really curious about your tactics. Like what were you doing after the lesson? So I'm really curious.
Yes, I didn't start it like right away, but after the lessons, I realized that when I if I go through the notes, maybe like halfway through the course and thinking that I should have done it earlier, it would have been to like, just like go because like I during our lessons, I write in our notebook and like I scribble in them. And sometimes if I go back like a few weeks later, I'm like, I have no idea what I wrote.
Yeah,
So
that's
like
crazy.
if I do it immediately after or like few hours later, I write it out. I have another notebook. I write it out nicely. And then, oh, and I also put the vocab in Quizlet. It really helped because when we talk about stuff during our lessons, there is like a story to it because, we talk about certain topics and those topics help me remember the vocabulary. But
Mhm.
like compared to if I just try to like force memorize like new words, I'm like, I have nothing to link it to. So I think that helps.
That's true. Yeah. Like, I always tell, like, after my lessons, like, make sure that don't study today, but tomorrow maximum. Like, worst case scenario, tomorrow you have to check this. Otherwise, you're gonna forget it. Like, if you look at it, like you said, 3 days later, you're gonna be like, "What is this? I have never seen these words before in my life." And even I think when I ask you in the lessons, hey, remember, do you remember this word? I give you the sentence, remember you were doing this and that by using that word, because I also remember it that way, to be honest. So yeah, given a context is like
hmm
really, really important actually. And you are very good at using AI also.
Yes. So, well, recently I downloaded DeepSeek, and I think I
Claro.
just saw it somewhere online where they said, okay, like you can take a picture of something and they'll translate it for you. I'm like, why
Mhm.
don't I try it? So I just like I put in the vocab list that they had on like Turkishle. I picked like, like 5, 10 words, and I
Mhm.
went, okay, can you give me some like techniques to learn and memorize these words? And they gave me a list. They're like, okay, so one way of doing it is to like remember, like form a story in your head. So for example, this verb odaklanmak, so it's
Mhm.
kind of like they
I remember
and
that,
they wrote the
yeah.
sentence. They're like, imagine a duck focusing on something. So I just remember this yellow duck like focusing on something, and
Uh-huh.
then now I'll never forget this verb.
It's
So like that's
amazing.
one
It's
way. Yeah.
amazing.
And they also put it in a story for you. So I asked like, what's another technique? And they're like, oh, you can put in a story. So they actually put in a story for you, and then you
Uh-huh.
can read it and you can kind of link it. So I think that was
Exactly. Now,
helpful
I
as
use
well.
ChatGPT a lot, but what was the name of the program again? I haven't tried.
This is DeepSeek. So
DeepSeek,
DeepSeek is
actually.
like, I guess, the Chinese version of ChatGPT. Well, not it's not in Chinese. It's just China
Yeah, yeah,
developed it.
definitely. I should
Yeah.
I should give it a try. How about like what's kept you motivated during the program?
What keeps me motivated is, I guess, like when I kind of see progress, because in the beginning it was hard because you learn slowly and you're like, there are like a million things. And sometimes when you read different sentences, you're like, what is all of this? But like when you start to understand it, and sometimes when I watch movies and when I listen, I'm like, oh, okay, I actually understand this. And it becomes more interesting. And then you can pick up like a book and you're like, okay, you can read, like you can understand like the general gist of it. And you're like,
Mm.
okay, well, this is exciting because like you get to understand stuff. You understand like stuff like gossip, and then it becomes more interesting. So like, okay, I will continue.
Yeah, actually, that happened to me once. Like a student of mine, she was like, Sibel, like, I have to tell you something. The other day, I was able to gossip with my boyfriend, like they were in a restaurant and they just gossiped about the other table. And she was like, mission accomplished. So
Wow. Yeah.
you're right. In A1, I think it's more about like you're getting used to the language. It's all about new suffixes and everything. But in A2,
Yeah.
it gets more conversational, and B1, I think it's now fully conversational. So you're right. I think also seeing your progress motivated me a lot as well.
Okay, that's
It
good.
it it, it
Sometimes it feels
motivated.
like progress is slow, and sometimes you're like, ah, you're like, yeah, it's gonna take me forever.
Oh, but it's so normal. It's so normal. Like it's the same for everything. It can't always be like this. Sometimes we have to
Yeah.
do it and
Yeah,
then
sometimes you get stuck.
yeah,
Yeah.
so no worries. I think it's absolutely normal. Okay. How do you feel about your Turkish speaking skills compared to the beginning then?
Okay, compared to the beginning, I think there's definitely improvement, but I think like I definitely still have a ways to be like fully conversational. Like sometimes
Mhm,
there are lessons like, sometimes I forgot that I forget the accusative, or maybe
mhm.
like I forget certain words, and I think like connecting words might still like sometimes I'll forget. But like I think compared to the first lesson, it's gotten much better, but definitely, well, language is like a lifelong thing. So like
It
I'm
is.
not,
It is.
yeah, expecting to be like, oh, fully conversational in like 6 months. Sometimes people like online they say, "Oh yeah, we'll get you like fully conversational in like 6 months." I'm like, how though? Like even as a child, you take like years to learn a language. So like yeah, so I'm trying not to like be so hard on myself when I
Mhm.
think about it, but sometimes it does get a bit like frustrating. Yeah.
But like apart from our sessions together,
Mhm.
normally were you using Turkish outside of our lessons or no?
Oh, like speaking it?
Yeah, speaking it. Mm-hmm.
Not too much. Like sometimes like, when my boyfriend's around, like we, look at the lessons together. I ask him certain lessons. So sometimes I have this like kind of like children's book and then like we
Mm,
just go through it together. Like, oh, he reads a like sentence and I read a sentence. So yeah. But I think because like I don't have a lot of Turkish friends and I am like a bit more shy when I don't speak a language confidently. I don't speak it as much. Yeah.
mm-hmm. But you guys have Turkish friends. Come on. You should start using them.
I know.
No?
But they speak so quickly. And I would say that their English is better than my Turkish. But yes, I understand the
Yeah,
point.
also most of the time, I
Yeah.
think they want to practice their English as well. That's what happens as far as I see.
Mm-hmm.
When my students also when they come to Turkey, they really want to speak Turkish, but like people in Turkey, they're like, "Oh, I really need someone to practice my English with." So they are like, "I really want to
Yeah.
speak, but I just can't, you know?" So yeah, you're right. I see what you mean. What do you think was most helpful for you in
Mhm.
improving your Turkish speaking?
Well, I think the most important thing is to just keep consistent
Mhm.
because let's say in one week you're like, oh, I'm gonna study 5 days. And then like the next week you only do like, like 30 minutes. And then you kind of like forget it. But let's say if you just do like, a couple of hours every week, but you keep doing it, it really helps. I guess with everything, like if you're what even if it's not learning a language, like consistency really
Mhm.
help. Like if
Yeah,
you keep going at it and you find that
definitely.
one day you're like, oh, I actually understood that.
Definitely. I remember, yeah, I asked you that before as well. And you told me that you were studying like every day, even though for 10 minutes, for 5 minutes, but you were checking every day. That's what you told me as far as I remember. Like,
Yeah, so even if it's like Quizlet, like, going through the Quizlet,
mhm.
like even if you have like just 10 minutes a day, it does help.
Do you still continue Duolingo from time to time, or did you just
No, I give up on Duolingo.
I think the bird is dead now, right? Anyways,
Yeah, I
I've read
saw
something
that.
like
I
that.
don't know why. Yeah. But yeah, I haven't touched Duolingo
Anyways,
in a while. Yeah.
okay, so same here. Like some days I'm too motivated. I do a
Mhm.
couple of lessons, but then I leave it for a month and I never touch it
Yeah.
again. So and so
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
someone that's just beginning to learn Turkish, what would be your
Mhm.
recommendations? What should they do or what they shouldn't do? What they should be staying away from?
So what I think, okay, so a broad advice, it's kind of like don't give up, even though you're not seeing like progress in the beginning. But I got this piece of advice. Okay, so early on in the program, when I still had some free time during my work day, I used to attend the tea time lessons. It was just only a few times. But there's this guy there. I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but he gave me a piece of advice. He was like, oh, sometimes like when you're going on about your day, just like think in Turkish. For example, oh, I'm doing this now. What is it in Turkish? Or for example, if you're having a conversation with someone in your head, like think in Turkish or think about what you're gonna say in Turkish. So that kind of helps me. Like sometimes before our lessons, like I'm like, okay, what did I do yesterday? Sibel was gonna ask. I'm gonna say like practice it in like Turkish. So like it does help. And I feel like if I do that more consistently, it'll be easier. But definitely like I guess for beginners, it would be like, oh, just like, whatever you've learned, just kind of practice in your head because it's a language. It applies to everything. Like it's not like something specific. It's like you can think about anything. Oh, what am I doing? I'm walking, I'm running, I'm going to the gym. So that would be like a piece of advice that I found useful. But I think also like one thing I realized not to stay away from, but also to be cautious is like, okay, Instagram has so many different accounts that teach you Turkish. But like in the beginning, I was like so excited and I tried to like follow everything. And then it got a bit like overwhelming because like they're like so many things and they're all like different levels. So I'll be like, okay, don't look at those, just practice like, the program, like go through the program. And then, I guess when you're at a higher level, like you can just go through that. But for beginners, it can get a bit overwhelming.
That's true. That's true. Okay, that's a very good
Hmm.
advice. Also, you're right. You can think like, oh, su içiyorum, like
Yeah.
konuşuyorum. But if you're a
Yeah.
beginner level, even let's imagine that you are learning the objects, and you can say, oh, this is
Hmm.
a duvar. That's a wall. Gözlük. Even for the objects, you can repeat it by yourself. I think that's a very nice advice indeed. Thank you so much for answering my questions. And actually, I want to thank you for everything, May. Really, like, I think after sixth week or something, I started getting
Hmm.
emotional knowing that we were coming towards the end.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Really, I can
Yeah.
cry.
Oh, it's so emotional. I know. Well, thank you for being such a great teacher. I think like whenever you learn something, the teacher is the most important because they can kind of like make or break the experience, If you have like a teacher who's always like overly strict, and you're like, oh, I don't want to
Mhm.
learn this anymore. But thank you for your endless patience. Honestly, like sometimes I've forgotten so many vocabulary and you have been like so patient. So yeah, thank you so much.
No, no, thank you. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay, then you're free. I'll see you later,
Okay.
hopefully.
All right. Görüşürüz.
Görüşürüz.